Hello, my name is Linda Belhaven. My family came to the area 50 years ago, so we've seen a lot of change. I spent 40 years in a banking career and spent 30 years as a volunteer community leader, which includes 12 years on the City Council. In fact, I'm very proud to have been inducted this year into the Scottsdale History Hall of Fame for my service to Scottsdale and my contributions. So thank you very much. I'm very proud. I'm very proud to have played a role over the last 30 years in helping to make this the wonderful community that it is. And I'm also endorsed by the police and the realtors, and I'm very proud of that. They understand the quality of our community is important. I wanted to say thank you for having me tonight. I know that there are many of you in the audience who may disagree with some of the votes that I've taken in the past, or disagree with some of the positions I've taken. But I welcome the conversation today, the opportunity to explain myself. And at the end of the day, we may just still disagree. But there's one thing folks have always said about me, even my critics say, you know where she stands and you know what she's thinking. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Linda. Also at the table, Lisa Borowski.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm known to talk a little bit, so I'm going to try to be really succinct and brief with this. I'm Lisa Borowski. I'm proud to be running for the next mayor of Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm a lifelong resident. I'm actually a native. I raised my beautiful daughter here. I left Scottsdale only to go to law school in New York at St. John's School of Law. I've been a practicing attorney since I took the bar and passed it, and that's 25 plus years. I've represented homeowners against big developers for when they did not uphold their promises to their clients, the homeowners. And I will bring that same fight, drive, and tenacity to represent you, the residents of Scottsdale. I've served on a number of boards and commissions. I'm currently in my 5th year on the Scottsdale Charros Foundation Board, which I'm super excited about. I served on the City Council 2008 to 2012, where I proved myself as a strong fiscal conservative, and I'm very, very proud of that. I want to get into a lot more here, but as you can tell, I'm running out of time, and I'll share the rest with you as we go. Thank you.
There we go. Lisa Borowski. So as in the candidates for City Council, we have prepared questions from... The current mayor has been shown censoring residents' public comments, as well as comments from other council members. How would you keep order at council meetings and ensure that residents can speak?
Well, that's easy. You let them have their time and don't interrupt them before their time is over. And if it's clear they're finished. There was one poor woman, she was talking about Dynamite Road, and it was clear she was winding up, and he just completely cut her off. It would have taken 2 more seconds to let her do that. I just think you need to let people talk. The other is, he cuts off council members, and I don't know if any of you watched the conversation about the attorney's fees on the lawsuit that Barry was asking. The mayor should have said, Barry, would you like to make a motion for the council to discuss the fees in public? Would have ended the argument and moved the conversation forward. He would have needed a motion and an affirmative vote. Yeah, I know then Barry said, I want to go into executive session. If that failed, the mayor should have said, Barry, would you like to make a motion to move into executive session? It ends the call back and forth. He needs a motion and an affirmative vote. If he doesn't get the support, at least he's made the point and he's got the council on record, and we're not having bickering up there. And so I think it's letting people speak, but then helping council members understand how they can move the conversation forward the way they like, even if you disagree with what they want to do.
Thank you, Linda. All right, Lisa?
Well, the current mayor has a lot to hide. He has a lot to be exposed for. So as a result, he wants to stuff people from talking, stop people, suffocate them from talking. So first off, you don't have a lot to hide, you don't have a lot of exposure when you're the mayor of Scottsdale. I will not. We need to restore, City Hall needs to restore faith with the voters and the residents, and it requires citizen input, resident input. I am all about that, and I am about letting people speak, but more importantly, we need to invite them into the process. I'm an advocate for direct appointments on boards and commissions and bringing residents more into the conversation. And we start by going out. I'm also an advocate, meaning the council goes out to the community to find out input and encourage that. I'm an advocate for a districting system, which the current mayor said he was going to bring to the voters, but I'm very, very serious about it. I think we need direct representation so that the council is more accountable to the residents.
Thank you, Lisa. Another question we have is that both of you served on city council, as you've identified, in the past, and when thousands of apartments were approved, how do you explain your votes on so many apartments? Lisa?
Sure, I'll start. If you want to alternate, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So Mayor Ortega, he's full of information that doesn't add up and is not factually supportable. So he's claimed that I've voted for apartments, which in fact he's using numbers that are not at all reflective of my votes. So I was very conservative even back in 2008, 2012 when I was looking at apartment projects to approve, which I approved 2 in the year that he's talking about, which one replaced the dilapidated orchid tree, if you recall that, at Camelback and Scottsdale Road. It had been empty for probably a decade and just looked like a rat-infested, dilapidated property. The Sonoran Village Optima project was a strong replacement at a time when we did not have many apartments in the city. I've been on record, I'm still on record, that I am absolutely opposed to all the high-density, and in most cases apartments, mediocre, no quality, residential approvals that have come down the pike. I don't need to defend my votes. You can count on me not to continue the madness with the high-density projects.
Thank you, Lisa. Linda?
So the question about apartments is intertwined with a conversation about development, which then you ask people, what are your concerns, right? We hear about traffic and we hear about water. And so when we're considering apartment requests, we need to think about the relative impacts on traffic and water, right? We're Republicans, we believe in property rights. Every property owner has a right to build something, and whatever they build is going to create traffic and it's going to make demands on water. So the question is, how does that compare? So I know we heard from the council candidates about the Mercado project across from the hospital. Imagine, so if you don't want apartments, but you'd rather have office, which is allowed now, consider the difference between a 1,000 square foot apartment and a 1,000 square foot medical office. Right? My doctor is himself, he's got 4 assistants and 15-minute appointments. That's going to create a lot more traffic than a 1,000 square foot apartment with 2 people who might work outside the home. And so, yes, in the right place, in commercial areas and employment centers, apartments may make sense and may create less traffic and use less water than alternative uses. We need to think broadly about that.
Good answers, both of you. Did you want to say
Point of
something?
order. We didn't talk about this, but can I do a brief rebuttal to that? Because this has come up before.
Well, you can do that, but then Linda's going to be able to say something too.
No problem.
You good with it?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Makes it
and
more interesting anyway.
right, not one-dimensional. Linda and I have actually had this conversation on a platform just like this in the past. So, I call into question the comparison between a 1,000 square foot medical office and a 1,000 square foot apartment. Apples and oranges. A 1,000 square foot apartment is generally surrounded by another 1,000 apartments, isn't it? That not being the case in the 2-person or 2,000 square foot office building. So I think that analogy fails based on the reality of the projects, and I think that's just an excuse to potentially move forward and approve more apartments, which I'm opposed to. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Linda, something to say?
Yeah, just briefly, I was talking about, so Mercado is already approved for a 4-story office, and they wanted to build 4-story apartments. So I'm actually literally talking about the same size building, foot for foot, different uses. Thank you.
Okay, good. Next question. Every 2 years, the Transportation Department releases the traffic volumes and collision report. I know you've both seen it. This report gathers data for 2 years and is published 11 months after the end of the second year the data is gathered. How would you ensure that the residents have updated, timely information?
These are about traffic data?
Yep, that's what it says.
Okay, my turn.
It's Transportation Department report.
Okay, so I used to work for a man years ago, and when I complained about my goals, he says, do you want to argue about the number, or do you want to agree it's directionally correct? So whatever people tell us the traffic volumes are, the problem is traffic's the problem. So the numbers don't matter. So what are we going to do to fix it? So one of the things is our traffic signal timing is god awful. Awful. We used to be the pride of the metropolitan area, and we're awful. You may have noticed we always had lagging turn signals. Now sometimes they're preceding and sometimes they're lagging. That creates problems. We're not adjusting our signal timing for construction projects. If anybody drove Hayden at Indian Bend a couple of months ago, that was god-awful. There's no reason for that to back up. The signals should have been better. We're not timing construction projects with each other. Why are we doing construction on Indian Bend when the freeway, I thought I was being smart to avoid the freeway. I took Hayden and I got stuck there. We should be coordinating these better. So there's a lot we can do to make traffic better, and I don't think the numbers matter. It's what are we going to do about it? Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Linda. Lisa.
Yeah, and I actually agree with what you just said. The look back is great, or current data, but let's get ahead of this and let's try to avoid future both traffic collisions, etc. So let's start with the easy issues. Don't start projects, road improvement projects during high tourism events. The Barrett-Jackson, for example, or the Arabian Horse Show. We need to take a real close look at we all pay a half-cent tax that goes to 0.5 cents of our taxes goes to the county-wide roadway improvement fund. We need to take a serious look at how they're spending our money to improve roadways outside of Scottsdale. We've been a donor city for a very long time, and I think it's time to take that back and spend on improving our own roadways here in Scottsdale. Light synchronization is a big, big issue. I mean, I think, you know, it's a very sophisticated system that we have, and it looks like no one's paying attention to that. That's one example, and I can think of many, many others. But I just got the bell.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, you can. Go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, I just think it makes it more interesting when Lisa and I can sort of respond to each other. So I just want to explain, the county regional transportation is a tax the voters approved, and Lisa's right, we're a donor city, but since the voters approved to pay into that fund, we can't get out of it. We don't have a choice. And the other is, if we don't use county and federal money, we're going to be spending a whole lot more money, and we're not reclaiming the money you're already paying to the county and the federal. So I think we need to be smart and thoughtful about how we're claiming what we can, and understanding that we can't get out of voter-approved taxes. Thank you. Well, why can't we?
No, why aren't we?
Aren't we what?
There'll be time for questions from the audience. So let's,
Okay,
Lisa,
however,
thank you.
it's going to be on your ballot in November, so we're all going to have a say, Prop 400, so that's the point. And I believe there is a city that has withdrawn from that, but we can save that conversation for later.
Okay. Very good. I don't know if you know this, but so I have a question for you two. We have cities that obviously touch Scottsdale. And I happened to be at a meeting about a year and a half ago in Carefree because they're rezoning a 23-acre piece of property at Carefree Highway and Cape Creek Road. Okay, Carefree Highway and Cape Creek Road. And so at the meeting, I raised the question. I said, well, this is going to generate a lot of traffic. What are your proposed traffic counts? And they actually said, well, they're going to be high, but we don't care because all that traffic is going to dump over onto Scottsdale, and that's their problem. You guys have been around with city council. What can we do about something like that with these towns around who are planning on dumping traffic into the roads that we're responsible for?
I mean, the answer is nothing. They can drive on our roads, right? We can't put a gate outside of Scottsdale, however much we would like to, right? That, in any event, we can keep up with our roads based on the population and traffic counts in our city. We can make road improvements in the particular area you're talking about. For example, I'm interested in exploring options with a thoroughfare that goes down from Happy Valley and exits, on the 64th Street 101 exit. So we should start looking ahead so that we can accommodate. The last thing, I was kidding about the gate. We don't want to do that. We're a tourism-centric city. We want visitors to come to our city, and we want to have a sophisticated and up-to-date, well-maintained, and be ahead of developing our roadways. So it's a good experience for everyone, the residents and visitors coming our way, to spend their money in our city. So,
Linda, what do you think about that?
So Lisa's right, we can't put up a gate and keep people out. But I think in some cases we can do a better job collaborating with our neighbors. And you may have seen more recently, the mayor said we don't need a hockey arena on our border and you can't do it anyway. And like they don't care what we think about their land use decisions. But they're going to care about having an efficient project and how their traffic flows and what the impact is on Scottsdale Road. It's in their best interest. So in that case, I think we follow the model the city used when the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community built the spring training facility at Via de Ventura and the 101. We sat down with the community, the city sat down with the community, said, what does Pima Road need to look like? Some of you may remember it used to be the yellow line, the little Pima Road, the yellow line was the border between the two communities. Said, so what should Pima Road look like and how are we going to handle the traffic? And oh, by the way, there's stormwater and flooding issues that we could address. And the Salt River community and the city collaborated and paid for jointly improving Pima Road to benefit us as well as them and to improve the flood. And I think that's an example of how we can work with some of our neighboring communities to minimize the impact, but to share in some of the costs that might be incurred.
Well done, both of you. That's good. Okay, we have another question here. Our Mayor Ortega brags about passing the 2035 General Plan, which designates 3 locations along the Shea Corridor as urban. Do you support that general plan?
I do not. I was on record and I opposed it. I actually campaigned against it, and it was because it was half-baked, okay? Ortega likes to make a point that the prior city council, one term I was a part of, did not bring the updated general plan to the voters. That's because, guess what? You don't have to change it. If it's not broke, why fix it? Our general plan was very, very healthy and covered the basis for our citizens very, very well. Well, what he brought forward and rushed it through without citizen involvement was further increased urbanization and mass transit in, for example, the Scottsdale and Shea area, which you just talked about. So I was completely against it. He misrepresented it to the voters, and it has, one of the reasons now the apartment project's going up probably a lot easier in that area, because it calls for that type of housing in that area.
Okay, Linda.
So those of you who were around in the 80s, late 80s and 90s may remember the conversation about what Shea Boulevard was going to look like, right? I see people nodding, right? There was a lot of concern that Shea was going to look like Bell Road in Phoenix with fast food restaurants and gas stations and auto repair shops, and that wasn't what the community wanted. So in order to protect Shea Boulevard and the scenic corridor, they said, okay, we're going to put all the commercial uses in a cluster. So that's why you see the commercial clustered around the hospital at the 101, and then Scottsdale and Shea was always a commercial center. I remember driving by and saying, if anybody was smart, they should put a grocery store there, and somebody put a Safeway there eventually. Anyway, and so the general plan says that's where commercial goes so we can protect the neighborhoods. And it's called a growth area because they understand that as the area gets older, we need to reinvest in the old tired buildings to keep it fresh and up to date. It does not automatically give that right to those areas. So if anybody wants to come in and say, this is a growth area in the general plan and I want to you want to do more, it needs to come before the city council and it needs to make sense, it needs to provide benefit to the community. It is not a guarantee just because it's in the general plan. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And Lisa, you had a comment on that?
Well, I just want to say, Linda, you did support it though.
I was on the council that wrote it, and I was on the council that voted to put it to the citizens, yes.
Okay, anything else on that? Okay. The current, let me stand up here for this. The current makeup of the commissions is determined by the council majority, which have become a rubber stamp for urbanization. How would you change that?
Yes.
Wait a minute, Linda, you're first on this.
Okay, it's okay.
Okay, you don't care? All right, go ahead.
I said it, I don't know when I said this, but direct appointments on the boards and commissions, I think is a real opportunity for our city to take back control, restore it with the residents. So I think that, you know, in terms of what happens now, it's the majority that governs who's on boards and commissions. And so at the current time, residents are, you know, out of popularity with the council majority, from what I can tell. So direct appointments provides the opportunity to have, you know, if I wanted to appoint Patty Badnock, right, to the Planning Commission, I could do that. And we would have dialogue, and we would be able to talk about what my goals are as mayor, what, you know, her goals are as a resident, a well-informed resident, and we'd have a lot more give and take, and I think it would be far more productive. So I'm very much a fan of that idea, and I do think it would alleviate the problem you've just asked about.
Linda.
So I'm not sure I would agree with the premise that says that planning and zoning and development review board are rubber stamped. And I do know that in more recent years, council has appointed what they call regular people. So typically folks got appointed who had experience in architecture and planning, who are experts in the field, who could bring their expertise to help make projects better. In fact, there's an architect right now on Development Review Board who I think has done amazing jobs. He is not hesitant to send people away, ask them to bring it back, tell them how they need to make it better. He adds a lot of value bringing his expertise. So I think people with experience bring a lot of value, but we've also shifted the makeup to include folks who don't have experience. I think there's some risk with that, but it does give residents some additional voice. I do not support direct appointments because then that citizen is just a representative of that city council member, and I'd rather have them accountable to everybody on the council and bring their best thinking and not have to be accountable to represent that council member's point of view.
Okay, I've got another question here. Did you want to say something?
I think it's worth explaining that a little bit further, because what Linda just said, that board or commission member is only accountable to one city council member. Well, that's true of the city council member to the voters. So it's almost like the direct appointment, or it is like the direct appointment is an extension of the council member and thereby more accountable to the voters. So that's the point.
Linda, comment?
Yeah, what I'd argue is the boards and commissions allow residents to get involved and bring their unique expertise in areas that we may not know anything about. And so I really think we need to allow them to have their own thoughts, bring their own opinions, and advise us to help us be smarter, not for us to tell them what their decisions need to be.
Did you want to have a comment?
Yeah.
Just one time.
So clearly, if anyone was listening, I'm not going to appoint lawyers to the Planning Commission. So I don't know. That didn't even, sorry, that didn't make sense to me. I would always embark on appointing somebody, and I'm sure every other member of the council would, that was the best fit for that particular board or commission. It's also the Minority Council Protection Act when you have direct appointments, isn't it? Because in that respect, you don't just have the majority governing who's on the board or commission, because 4 votes gets the board or commission. So, and I think that's a disadvantage for the voters, and being accountable to my constituents as mayor and the entire city of Scottsdale, boy, am I going to hear about it if I've appointed, some person that's not doing a good job on the board or commission. So much more accountability, in my opinion.
And then back to you, Linda, for
Yeah, I was just going to say, if 4 people vote to put you on, or 4 people tell you what to do, it's the same outcome. I'd also like to point out that when we had direct appointments, someone appointed their father and somebody else appointed their wife. That's not about giving residents a voice in our conversation.
All right. All right, this question is going to be 2 questions more, and then we'll open up the audience like we did before with city council people. The question is, do you support the proposed tax increase, and do you think the current ballot language is misleading and needs to be changed? You want to take that first, Linda?
Sure.
All right.
I do think the ballot language is misleading. I think there's a lot that's misleading about that tax. In fact, in the frequently asked questions, it says there is no surplus tax. So the second preserve tax, I don't know how much detail I can go into with the time we have. The first preserve tax expires next year. They want to, when that expires, add a new tax. The expiring tax is 0.2. They want to add 0.15. So the new tax would be less than the expiring tax. The second preserve tax goes till 2034 after all the land is paid for and what the voters have limited the use for. There's $250 million left over that's unaccounted for. And in the FAQs it says there is no surplus. Well, there won't be a surplus if we retire the tax, but they're not talking about that. So I'm a yes with reservations on the tax because I think we do need the money to protect our preserve and to take care of our parks. But if the tax is approved, I would look to retire the second tax. I think it would have been much more responsible for us to ask the voters to expand the use of the second preserve tax. We wouldn't need the new tax and we'd have parks and preserve covered for the next 10 years. So I'm a yes with reservations because we can't always get exactly what we want, exactly how we want it, but I think we can get there if we retire the second tax.
Lisa?
I'm a no. I've been a no since this came up and from the outset, and Linda, as you just heard, is a yes. I think there are a number of reasons to be a no. First, it was clearly misleading when the language first was proposed, so that's always a bad idea. I'm not a fan of increasing sales tax, period, unless there's a real absolute need. The current administration, led by David Ortega, has shown that there is no fiscal responsibility happening at City Hall. This is the equivalent of throwing good money after bad. So there are a lot of wants being paid for, many wants when needs are suffering and going by the wayside and not being funded, like public safety. It's inexcusable. That's the #1 priority, isn't it? Funding public safety. So that's just, dangle the carrot. Our public safety is not funded adequately, so you need to approve a new sales tax. The question should be, why isn't it funded? You're fired, city council majority, right?
So now one last question from here, and then we'll go to the audience, and it's this. So your opponents, and obviously you're both sharp women, if you could ask Lisa anything, Linda, what would you ask her? And then obviously it's going to go the other way too.
Wow.
You can be respectful. You're both intelligent people. Let's see what you say. Okay, and your time's up.
Lisa and I served together for 2 years. Her last 2 and my first 2. We've gotten to listen to each other in a number of forums, so I feel like I really know Lisa not pretty well, but I feel like we sort of have an understanding of each other's positions. So I really...
You don't need to ask her any question.
No, and I'm thinking I could ask a question, right, to try to show up the difference is between us, but I think we've had an opportunity to do that. I don't think I need to add a question to do that. So,
that's a fair answer.
Thank you.
Good. Good answer.
That was very nice. Well, I'm going to ask Linda a question. I'm going to get down on my knees. Will you drop out of the race and help me beat Ortega?
Well, I didn't expect that one, but that's pretty good. All right. So with that, isn't humor wonderful? We need so much more of it. All right, so we're going to take questions from the audience. We'll start over here. I saw your hand up. Go first, or you can go up first if you don't mind. Go ahead.
I'm very involved in school, especially in SOC, because I'm very passionate about kids and bias little boys. so I know a lot of issues going on. Do you support in the city of Scottsdale people being allowed to use the bathrooms of their choice?
So the question is, coming from a mother of 5, do you support people having use of restrooms in Scottsdale of their choice? So who wants to go first? Does it make any difference? Okay, go ahead. Lisa.
No, the answer makes a difference. I support boys are boys, girls are girls, bathrooms. So, yeah, and I'm very much involved in the school board races. 2 of the candidates are here, we're here. So, thank you for the question.
Yeah, I agree, and I've never seen anything that says you can use whatever you want, so I don't know where that's coming from, so.
Well, there's been a push. A lot of people out there talk about it. Hasn't happened here yet, but we're seeing it in other cities. So Nancy, you had a question?
I'd like to preface my remarks by saying I'm not an attorney and I don't understand the issues completely, but I'd love to get your perspective on the current lawsuit that was lost. I am personally shocked and appalled that the city of Scottsdale would withhold exculpatory evidence that resulted in conviction of DUIs of 9 people, and that they sent in paralegals to help slam dunk the plea deal. I could be wrong, and I state that, but I'd like your opinion. I mean, to me, this so disparages the integrity of the city of Scottsdale and our legal department. I'm just in shock.
You're talking about the wrongful termination case? that the
Yeah,
city just
but I'm
lost?
talking about the fact that exculpatory evidence was withheld and convictions came down when these people did not have DUIs. I can't even fathom how this could.
I'm not familiar with that. Either one of you two want to take that?
So the short of the lawsuit was there was a fellow who worked in the city attorney's office who was new to his role. This is the claim. I have no official knowledge of any ongoing suit, so this is my understanding of the suit. He came to work for the city and he claims that the person he replaced was not providing evidence to the courts appropriately and was withholding it, and that folks were wrongly convicted as a result.
Correct.
The man then was fired by the city attorney, and she claims that he was engaging in inappropriate workplace behavior. He claims he was fired because he blew the whistle and sued the city. The city lost the suit and they're now appealing the decision. So certainly the way Nancy describes it is horrendous and unacceptable, but I have no firsthand knowledge of what's going on, just what I've been able to read in the paper. So I agree, it sounds horrible and shouldn't be tolerated.
And it's an ongoing lawsuit right now.
That's right, that's right. The city lost in the last few weeks and they just made the decision. Yeah, the guy was awarded $5 million in damages and the city's going to appeal that decision, so
I
it's
mean,
ongoing.
I think it disparages the city of Scottsdale because 9 people got convicted when they shouldn't have.
Well, that's the claim, we don't know if that's
That's the
true.
So
claim.
I mean, that he won the lawsuit, so
But it's on appeal.
Well, but,
I don't even think.
and again, I don't know, right? So we won the lawsuit that he was wrongfully terminated for whistleblowing. It doesn't mean what he blew the whistle on was true.
And then I've also heard that paralegals were facilitating the plea deals.
Yeah,
But
and I
I
don't
don't know if that's correct, but I don't.
Neither one of us
It's so
know.
disparaging to the city of Scottsdale.
Agreed.
Lisa, did you want to say something about that?
I just want to say I would never provide an opinion on a legal proceeding that I'm not intimately familiar with the facts and what's going on. So we just talked about this, Yvonne and I, before this started. I'm going to get a copy of the pleadings and I'm just going to look at it because it does concern me too. And only then would I want to give any sort of opinion what I thought happened or what I thought about the city attorney's role. So it's a great question that's on people's minds. I think really more troubling about the city attorney is the sales tax language that was allowed to be approved. And now we're going to be all paying for defending that lawsuit, right? So.
Well, we all need the city to have good and fair representation. in all of its offices, especially the legal ones, and these are the kind of people who are going to make sure that happens. So that's good. When we have Republicans in control, we already know it's going to be better. Come on. Michael, you got a question. Hit it.
Both of you are aware how angry and involved I was in the ADU issue. And the governor signed it and allowed it. But I'm hearing that the Scottsdale attorneys are reviewing that and how it might be tweaked or whatever to benefit those of us that are so appalled that it passed. Do you have any knowledge about that? Do you have any opinions about it?
Lisa?
Accessory dwelling unit, for those of us not as much in the know as Michael. I have no personal knowledge of what the city attorney's office is looking at. I mean, obviously, all legislation, it comes with the language that it comes with, and its interpretation that goes through the court system. So you got to be a little careful there too. Whatever modifications you're trying to do after a statute is enacted, that's subject to interpretation by the court, i.e. litigation. So I'd be real curious what you're referring to.
I just heard that the attorneys were looking at it. I heard that from current city councilmen, and that I shouldn't get all upset about it because it's not finalized yet. Well, the governor signed it, so I'm hoping you guys have some inside information about it.
I would say that as mayor, I'll work to make that piece of legislation the most resident-friendly for Scottsdale that is possible without exposing the city to liability.
Absolutely.
I heard someone say, what's an ADU, right? So it's an accessory dwelling unit. What Michael's talking about is the legislature passed legislation that said if you're in a single family lot, you can build a second home on your property by right, and you can use that as a short-term rental if you choose.
Within 5 feet of your neighbor's property line.
Correct. So if we've got setbacks for sides and fronts today, it took that away from the city's ability to regulate that. It also says if you can build a third unit if you agree that it would be priced as affordable housing.
Yes.
And the city has no say over it. Now, the one saving, now I don't know what the city's working on, but I think the one saving grace is the legislation says within a mile of a central business district. So it's...
But there was no protection for NAOSs. So like in our home, we have a large lot, but somebody could come in and build one right next to our property line.
So what Michael's talking about is NAOS is natural area open space, and so for those of you who live in the north, you know, if you're on a single family lot, there's a building envelope you can build in, and then the rest has to be kept natural. And what Michael is saying is she believes the legislation does not respect NAOS, so your neighbor could build in the NAOS right on your lot line. That I don't know, but that's certainly concerning.
We're waiting to hear.
So the hope, but I think the loophole might be if you call it, Central Business District, how you, they didn't tell us how to define that. How we define it may narrow the areas that are impacted. That would be my hope, but I don't know exactly.
Just quickly, it doesn't include properties in HOAs, FYI.
Right, that's correct.
What'd you say, Lisa?
HOA property.
If your HOA CCNR specifically prohibited, they can't override your HOA.
Okay, good. I was going to ask that same question. Good point.
But, did your HOA say you can only build one house per lot if that was what your zoning was? A lot of them assume that the city zoning would support.
Use your mind.
Anybody else that has a question?
Tim.
Go ahead, and then I'll take you, and we're probably going to end it up there, but let's go.
Okay, so let's talk about Old Town, right?
Old Town.
Like, because I haven't heard a lot of conversation about it except from myself, so thank you for that. But can we talk more about it? Like, year over year, it is getting more dilapidated. It looks worn down, old. I went to Jackson, Wyoming, which has the same kind of like lure. It is spotless, it is pristine. And then I came back old town, it's almost embarrassed. So like, what do we do? Like, what are our options? Who's responsible for making that as nice as it used to be?
Go ahead, Lisa, you want to answer that?
And Tammy's right, I do. This is my, as part of my vision, I
Oh,
see
yeah.
a strategic plan that includes beautification project in Old Town ASAP. I think this is long overdue. It's actually, I think, dangerous to walk around there, literally and figuratively. Trip hazards all over, mismatched sidewalks. People talk about vomit all over the place, and it's real. It's true. That's there. So pretty is pretty does. I've used that saying before. I think if you upgrade the area, the landscape, the sidewalks, etc., it brings up the entire attitude and experience for the business owners. It gets people down there. I have also talked about having a meaningful circulation system down there, like a real trolley that gets people all throughout the area and doesn't require, pulling your car out and going on the west side of the road and, reparking your car 3 times to go shopping. So I want to work with the business owners in a meaningful way. There's a lot of dispute about what should be done between the business operators, owners, property owners, and I really think it's time to get a cohesive approach and a strategic plan.
Okay, thank you.
Linda?
So I think we can all agree, right? O-Town is a little bit tired, and we can power wash the streets and we can clean up the alleys. We're not going to go in as a city and paint everybody's building, right? And so I think part of the answer for downtown is we need to protect the really special historic core of downtown, and then we can support those businesses by having more people who live and work downtown to support those businesses. I used my office back in the late 90s, was at 3rd Avenue and Scottsdale Road. I remember when I'd go out to take a walk at lunch, I remember I ran into some tourists and they said, where is everybody? Because there was nobody on the street and there weren't many places to go to lunch. Today, there are more people who live downtown, so we see more restaurant patios and people walking dogs and pushing baby carriages. And I think if we can add around the edges, so we protect historic Old Town, but add people around the edges, we provide the customers that'll support those businesses and make it better. Just power washing the streets isn't going to be enough.
Thank you, Linda. With that, how much time do we have, Candace?
We're past.
We're past. We're past. Okay, so people have homes to get to, and well, here's the problem. Yvonne, who is Miss Republican,
She has a question.
she has a question. I can't close without allowing her to ask that. So if you don't mind, Yvonne, what's your question? It better be good after that.
I totally appreciate that. So one of the big problems is in 2019, the bond project was passed through the taxpayers on 58 must-have critical projects, right? $315 million of taxpayer money was taken for these projects, and to date, only 13 of those 58 projects have been completed. I am really upset about the misuse of taxpayer money at City Hall, and I would love to know what people are going to do to hold people accountable, because we've got $6 million sewer projects that are now scoped at $65 million. And that is not inflation, my friends. So I would just like to ask the candidates what they can do to hold people accountable for the cost overruns and all that.
What can you do about it now? I mean, what could we do about it now as a city, and what will you do if you become mayor?
Well, it's what we all can do. We can fire the current administration, meaning the mayor. I just want to tell you, this is unbelievable but true. David Ortega in the 2020 ballot statement said he was going to be a full-time mayor-architect, and he was going to use his expertise to undertake and perform the 2019 bond projects and keep them on budget. That's what he said.
That's
So,
almost exactly what he said.
That is, I think I might have scrambled a few words. That's exactly what he said then. He said that in a recently published article, and he continues to publish this comment. He's $20 million over budget already, and I mean, he hasn't even done. There are 13 that have been done. So he needs to go. If that was his idea of applying his expertise as,
And if you
to
were there,
keep
what
the
would you do?
projects on budget, well, heads would roll, that's for sure. I'm a lawyer. When I have a client budget and doing construction defect cases, the expert budgets are, in the millions of dollars, okay? So if my experts quoted me $3 million and then came in at 6, 2.5 years later, yeah, we're not going to work together in the future, and you're going to have to you're going to have to hold to your budget, which the city should be doing, and then we're not going to work together in the future. So, having this dialogue with, it all starts at the top, David Ortega, the city council, then the city manager, then the planning department, capital projects, Dan Worth, who heads up the public works. So it's inexcusable. These people have been here a really, really long time. It's not inflation, 4.19% inflation over the same period of time. It's just bad scoping and budgeting. And the project should be scaled back to fall in line with the budget that was approved by the voters, or the voters should be asked to reconsider it.
And finally, Linda, your comment.
So there's a lot in there. So let's talk first about the pacing of the projects. There were a number of projects and they are being paced. When you guys approve a bond, you pay for the bond through your secondary property tax. So when we went to the voters in 2019 with the bond, we said, we know we have bonds that are going to be retiring over the next several years, and we will only issue enough bonds to keep your secondary property tax level, so that the new debt was going to pay off, was going to replace it's like paying off your mortgage and then taking out another mortgage, so your payment stays the same. So in order to keep that promise that said we're not going to raise your secondary property tax, we had to pace the projects over time to pay for them. So that's why they haven't all been completed and why they're being phased. The second issue with the overruns, there's two things that happen there. One is COVID. Nobody anticipated supply chain issues, inflation in construction areas. That was completely, we would have needed a crystal ball. The second part really is about accountability, because some of the projects were not scoped properly, and one in particular is the fire department. So do you want properly trained firefighters or not? Because if you remember, the city took over the fire department in '95. They're all going to start retiring next year. We need to have firefighters to keep you safe. Here's the happy accident. If we had had a crystal ball in 2018 when these were estimated, we would have asked for a bigger bond and your secondary property taxes would be higher. Instead, you're really paying the 2018 prices because the city had some one-time land sales that they were able to use to give you the projects as originally described, but you're not paying any more than was originally promised.
If you two become a good answer, if you two were mayor, could you remedy that so that the people could know this without having to wonder what the heck's going on?
So Tim, excellent point. I was just going to say this. The biggest problem is there's no explanation whatsoever. It's not only that there's no explanation coming from the mayor, it's in fact you cannot talk about it on the council dais, and don't dare show up to a council meeting and ask why a sewer expansion project that started at $6 million is now approved at $68 million. So I think that is the biggest problem. We need to restore transparency and accountability. It starts with transparency and being responsive to the citizens, because we're all left to wonder. It just looks like complete recklessness, doesn't it? And negligence.
Yes, it does. Linda, you have a final comment?
Yeah, I want to comment on the sewer project, because it looks like the city's being irresponsible with your tax dollars. 100% of the cost of that sewer is being paid for by the property owners. 100% of the sewer is being paid for with the property owners. When you build on a lot that doesn't have infrastructure, you have to pay to connect to the city. And if your neighbors have not built yet, you need to build enough infrastructure to support your neighbors So when your neighbor comes in, we're not digging up the street again. So the first guy in pays for everybody on the block, which is what this project is doing. The city came back and said, hey, remember you were going to pay $6 million developer to connect to the city infrastructure? Well, we want a bigger pipe, and we want you to use different materials. It's going to cost more, and oh, by the way, inflation and all that other stuff. So the deal was, he is going to pay for the entire sewer line. The city will reimburse him for the portion of the line that his neighbors will use, and when the neighbors build, they will reimburse the city. So it's not a misuse of taxpayer money. It's about charging the developer to build enough infrastructure to support themselves and any future development in the area.
I
Thank
think
you.
Mary Graham disagrees.
Well, I'd say with the two ladies running for mayor and the candidates we've already seen for city council, we have a really good group of people
Yes.
to take into this election, do we not? I think we do. And this will be our opportunity to take back the city. Let's do it.
Can we do 1 minute close? I just want to talk about my endorsements.
Let's do it. I think you're ready for it. Go.
All right, I just want to talk about, I know we're all in a hurry, but I'm very, very proud of my endorsements. Former Mayor Jim Lane, three-term mayor, very conservative. State House Representative Joe Chaplick, Alexander Collin, former AG Mark Brnovich, Phoenix City Councilman, who we all love, Sal DeCiccio, Goldwater Institute board member, and also my campaign chair, Tom Haddon, and of course, the Honorable Barry Goldwater Jr. So thanks for letting me include that. And all of my supporters in this room and elsewhere, thank you.
Thank you. Linda.
I just want to thank you all for the opportunity, and if you would like to know more about me at millhavenformayor.com. Thank you.
Okay, so you ladies can stay around.